All right. If anyone wants to help me out and like let me see you, that would be great. But if not, I will just make do. Let's see. Here we go. I'll start this. So I guess even if you could use that thumbs up button or whatever, have any of you heard of financial psychology and know it's a thing? Like a field of study?
I know I haven't.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Never, right? Right. Okay, that's been my experience. And here's the thing, that financial wellness, and I don't know why I'm having a hard time finding my play button. Let's see. Sorry, guys.
Top strip on your.
It shouldn't be on the right.
Top left, very top.
Slideshow, play. Oh my gosh, I am having a senior moment. Don't go into your 50s, people. Okay, here we go. So yes, so it's really interesting. I am actually, so I'm a CPA. Most of you know what a CPA is, a certified public accountant. So I'm like a nerdy math person, and I married a nerdy math person. And so you'd think that if personal finance and being healthy with it was about math, the two of us would agree. And we could not have disagreed more once we had a little extra money. So I started studying financial psychology about 10 years ago. And it was at that point, it was really just sort of the Wild West. There were a bunch of us who were rebels out there who believed that financial health had very little to do with your intelligence, education, or discipline, and had much more to do with your history, the way you experience life. So that is why financial wellness, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So financial health is having a balanced and comfortable relationship with money. And here's the thing, there's no dollar amount. Right? There's no dollar amount there. I'm not like, oh, having financial health means you have $100 million in the bank. And I will tell you, in my experience, I have encountered people with millions of dollars who are not financially healthy, and people with maybe $100 in the bank who are financially healthy. Does anyone want to say like, that's ridiculous? What are you talking about? No hard questions? Okay. So here are the 15 elements of financial health, and we're only going to talk about the first two in any sort of detail. So the first one is understanding our subconscious beliefs about money. They're called money scripts, and it's hard to change the ones that maybe are not so good for your financial future. And the second is understanding your financial history and the early experiences that you had and how those impact your current behaviors. So, and then if you want, you can just look through the other, I guess, 13 elements. Number 5 is one that I have a lot of people come and talk to me and work with me about communicating openly and honestly about financial issues. And seriously, the dollar amount does not matter. I have people who don't have any savings who come to me, and I actually just got a new client, and they probably are worth $150 million. So it just, if as you're building your career, you can also build healthy financial habits, you're going to be ahead of most people. Let's see. And then, so maintaining low and reasonable debt levels, which for those of you, and again, if you could do a thumbs up or something, let me know you're here. And just let me know how many of you have student loans. Or in the chat, that's fine too. Nope.
I still do.
You what?
I still do.
You still do, yeah, yeah. And so, yes, a lot. Okay. Oh, someone doesn't. Okay, great. So, uh, so having a reasonable amount of debt. So some people get completely freaked out having any debt. Some people don't worry about debt at all. But it really depends on kind of your risk level, experiencing high levels of satisfaction, of financial satisfaction, which probably many of you think is impossible, but I promise you it is possible. Periodically reevaluating a financial plan. How many of you have any sort of written financial plan? You know, the dreaded budget word, right? Okay, so we have a not I. I'm going to tell you, welcome, right? Right. So Hugo says no as well. Most people don't. I think it's something like Kiana, did I say that right? Says I don't, but it sounds beneficial. Yes, it is beneficial. To this day, my husband and I track all of our spending, but you have to do it in a way that suits you. So personally, I do mine with colored pens. I still kind of handwrite mine, but we can talk about that. But if you walk away with one thing from this session, it's that personal finance is personal, and what might work for me may not work for you. But the point is that you are responsible for figuring out what does work for you. So you might be interested as we go on to find out a bit about how we're hardwired for money, and neuroscience has helped us learn this. So money disorders are basically maladaptive financial behaviors that cause us stress. And so some of the symptoms are anxiety and worry about money, which again, there's no dollar amount there. You could have a lot of money and worry, you could have not much money and worry. A lack of savings, excessive spending, overspending, underspending is actually a money disorder, as well as workaholism. So, and if you guys are interested, I have handouts that you are welcome to email me. I'd be really happy to give you, and it will give you the detailed list of financial health and financial disorders. Okay, so what drives our financial behaviors? We are still hardwired to live in a communal society. Did you guys, is that something that you're familiar with? My mentor likes to say that we as humans have not had a software update in 150,000 years. And so if we live, like when we lived in a tribal community, our social capital and the way that we stayed safe in the world was actually to share and not to hoard. If you hoarded something in a communal society, there was a good chance you were going to be kicked out. And what is saving really? It's hoarding. I mean, it really is. That's what we're doing. We're hoarding it. I'm not now. Let's be clear. Saving is good. But what I am trying to say is that many of us are not hardwired to save. So thanks to neuroscience, what we know is that about 10% of us are hardwired to save money. So we get a dopamine release when we save. On the other end, 10% are hardwired not to save money. So they get a huge dopamine release when they spend. And so this is actually the brain scan of a journalist who is a huge spender, and not being a doctor, a neuroscientist or a neurologist or whatever. I don't really know what this is showing, but according to the article, it's showing that when he thinks about, yay, we have I love saving money person, which means that you're on the 10% that gets that dopamine release when you save. Anyway, this poor soul was is an overspender. And so for him, he actually has a dual problem, which is he gets a huge dopamine release when he saves, and he feels more, I mean, when he spends, and he feels more pain than average when he thinks about not spending. So for someone like that, helping them create a healthy financial plan actually is challenging and fun, because we have to figure out a way to get someone who likes to spend to get that same positive dopamine release and not spend their money. So we get to be creative and have a good time together. All right. So the other things so part of what drives our financial behavior is our hardwiring. And just so you guys know, I'm somewhere in the continuum. In the middle. I mean, I'm fine saving money, but I like to spend money. So I don't know. I'm sort of that boring middle person. Okay, but also our family of origin. So if you grew up in a family where there was a lot of talk about saving money and living below your means, you will have one of three responses to that. One is you might be just like your family and save a lot of money and live below your means. Two is you might think they were the most boring human beings on the face of the earth and say, I'm not going to live like them. And three is you might be somewhere in the middle. So your family of origin matters, the socioeconomic status that you grew up in, the trauma, which again, I don't know if you guys knew that trauma can actually be passed down through our DNA genetically. So our parents and our grandparents' trauma actually is genetically is in our DNA. And just think about the pandemic, right? I mean, that's a trauma that we're all dealing with. And if some people were hurt financially during the pandemic, some people actually ended up better off, but we all were traumatized in a certain way. That will affect our spending for the rest of our life. And just for myself, I'll probably never, ever run out of toilet paper again. And literally that was never anything I worried about. But now if we get down to like less than 8 rolls of toilet paper, I freak out and run to Target or Costco. And then cultural norms. So depending on what type of culture you grow up in, right? Talking about money, spending money, sharing money, loaning money, a lot of that, which we think there's one right way to be, changes from culture to culture. And then finally, financial education. And here's the interesting thing. So it is so great you guys are participating in this financial literacy class. I mean, like amazing, because that will cover your education part. But traditional financial education that doesn't include any sort of psychological component helps people change behavior about 7% of the time. So even this teeny tiny bit of just knowing about financial psychology and starting to think outside the box, like, I wonder why I behave the way I do. I wonder why my parents behave the way I do, can really make everything that has been presented to you even more effective. So, and finally, our financial, sorry, it's taboo to talk about money, which is probably half the reason I love doing it, because apparently I like talking about the elephant in the room. But how many of you, does anyone grew up in a family where you guys talked honestly about money? And not in a fighting way, like this is what we think about money, this is how we spend it, this is how we, because I know I didn't. Nope. Yeah. See, I didn't either, which is another reason, not then and not to your children. Right. And okay, so, so yay, your mom always told you to save money and nobody needs to know about our financial situation is such a common belief, Elsie, right? And yet, think about this. How are we supposed to learn about money and its role in our life if we never talk about it? right? Like somehow we're supposed to magically know how this impacts us. And so I'm 56, and when I was 18, so almost 40 years ago, I asked my father how much money he made, because my mom was mentally ill and addicted to many things, and my parents were divorced, and so we would run out of money at the end of a month, and I'd have to go ask him for money, and he was a lawyer. And so in my 18-year-old brain, I'm like, seems a lot nicer not to run out of money. I'd like to know how much a lawyer makes and how much, like what kind of life I can expect. And he looked at me and he said, that is the worst question anyone could ever ask. I am so embarrassed. I am so ashamed of you. And so I walked away from that conversation thinking, okay, money is clearly important because I'm no dummy, but apparently you can't talk about it. So I'm supposed to learn about it through, I guess, watching people, but no one that I'm watching really seems that happy, right? And so it was this conundrum. I didn't understand it. And so of course, my father, rest your soul, is in his grave, probably mortified. This is what I do for a living now. But it's really important to talk to especially our kids about money, or our nieces and nephews or grandkids or whoever is in our life. And one of my revolutions that I'm going to try and start is women should really talk about money, because I cannot tell you how many times, the men in my life will be like, oh, did you hear about this stock? Or did you hear about this loan? Or did you hear about whatever? Do you think my women friends ever talk about it? I mean, if I try and bring it up, they look at me as though I'm crazier than they already think I am. So does anyone talk with their friends about money? Anyone? Yes, ours. Okay. So, and you're the same one where your mother helped you too, right? Oh, Elsie, you do all the time. Kiana, sometimes, but not really, is probably more the norm. And it's very hard when you are the one person who wants to talk about it. And it's sort of like, you bring it up and people are like, okay, can I get a glass of wine? All right. So our money beliefs are called money scripts. And those are just our core beliefs about money. And they're usually formed in childhood. I hate the stigma behind talking about money. Yes. And especially because, and I'm sorry for the men on there because I'm really not dissing you, but I think it's a little more socially acceptable for men to talk about money. Women who want to talk about money and are in the financial world tend to be looked at as greedy. So then I have this stigma, and then I have a stigma. But luckily I'm a rebel with a big mouth, so I just keep trying. But money scripts are our core beliefs about money, and they drive all of our financial. All right, Clarissa, we're going to keep that. Sorry, I'm getting excited by the chat. We're going to talk about asking for a raise because, yep, me too. Okay, so they're usually formed in childhood. Because people don't talk about money, so we form these belief systems in order to explain the world to us, right? And because people don't really talk about money in an open way, the way that we learn about money is by observing and then creating a story with a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old brain. And then we're totally surprised that our money beliefs maybe aren't 100% true. I mean, when I put it like that, doesn't that seem a little nutty? Right? And usually, right, and that they can be passed down from generation to generation, and people, in different cultures have different belief systems, and they can be quite resistant to change. So one thing that is not going to help is just telling yourself, I need to change. Like if that was going to work, we'd all be, fit and worth millions of dollars, but that's not how human behavior happens. And actually, you'll have to have me back another time so I can talk about the fact that our prefrontal cortex, that our conscious brain, is only responsible for, on a good day, 7% of our behaviors, and on a bad day, 2% of our behaviors when we're stressed. The rest comes from the subconscious mind, and that's the part we need to change if we want to change any behavior. Okay, so can someone think of an example of a money script? Okay, I'll give you one. Rich people are greedy and cheap, right? And I want you to think about that. So that is a common belief system in almost every socioeconomic group, where rich is defined as whoever has more money than you, right? And many times that can happen because there might be someone in your life, a neighbor, an aunt, a sister, whatever, who had more money than anyone else in the family, and they were kind of a jerk. And so in our minds, we conflate the fact that they had money with the fact that they were a jerk. So there's 4 types of money scripts: money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. So most of us are, again, on a continuum. We have, sometimes one of these will be stronger than another. I vacillate between money avoidance and money vigilance. So just, so you're not just one thing. Usually people aren't just one thing. Okay, so money avoiders is money is bad or anxiety producing. Rich people are greedy, and I don't deserve money. And this is really, it actually is most common kind of with younger people. So, as you get to your 40s and 50s, you might grow out of it, you might not. And the common behaviors for people who are money avoiders, they might have difficulty talking about their finances. They probably don't track their spending or have a budget. Sometimes people won't even open their bills. And this is actually more common than I at least had thought before I dived into this arena. So even people who have the money to pay their bills have a story. Money makes them so anxious, they won't even open their bills. And they may have a difficult time asking for what they want financially. So that can be money avoidance. And I told you I have money avoidance in my belief system, and I have a hard time asking for a raise. So maybe, Clarissa, I will walk out of this, go to my boss and tell her I need a raise. If you promise that you're going to do it too. Now, money status. Oh, there we go. Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. As she wrote, I don't like checking my account balance. Yes. And that's another really common one. And when you think about it, it's like, what story am I telling myself about my account balance that's making it so important that I don't want to look at it? Right? All right. But so money status, people equate their self-worth with their net worth. And yet it's hard for them to save money because they actually, what they value themselves for, like their internal self, is what they have. And so they truly believe they are only as successful as the next new car, the next watch, the next raise, whatever. And so if you are a person, or you're in relationship with someone who has this belief system, it's really important to be kind to either yourself or them, or both, because asking someone who believes in money status is basically asking them to reduce their spending, is asking them to cut off a limb. And so understanding that, and not that they're bad or wrong, but understanding that's their belief system and being super kind about it, is really the best way to help someone with the money status belief system to get to the point where they see their internal worth is not about what they have outside. And I'm not against nice things. I'm just against nice things that you can't afford to keep you up at night, right? Keeping you from living whatever that next dream is. That's all I'm against. Now, money worship. Have any of you heard of the fixed mindset versus a growth mindset? No. Okay. So a fixed growth set, no, okay. So that is, there's a great book called The Growth, I think it's called, I'll have to look it up, what it's called, but it's about the growth versus fixed mindset. And fixed mindset people are people who believe, right, that there's a finite amount of talent that they have. They only have so much talent. They only have so much intelligence. They only have, you know, so much whatever ability to play sports. And the growth, and so for a person like that, with a fixed mindset, it's hard for them when they fail. And it's hard because they think if something doesn't go well, say like a test doesn't go well, they think it's a sign that they're not smart versus they didn't study right, or they need to find a different way. And people with growth mindsets are like, okay, I know I can do this. I'm gonna, you know, talk to the person who passed the test and see what they did. I'm gonna go see the professor, and they can distance themselves and their sense of themselves from whatever, you know, test or however they're measuring themselves. So money worship people tend to have a fixed mindset. So at the same time that they believe that there'll never be enough money, they also believe that more money will solve all of their problems. So you see how that can get someone really stuck, right? Because it's almost taking their sense of control away, which is, this will make me solve my problems, but it will never happen. I may as well give up, right? And so money worshipers, it's really, when I work with money worshipers, it's getting them to see that the picture is bigger, they're not stuck. There's ways around it. There's actually, sometimes people, and it can be men or women, have almost a belief that their prince or princess charming is going to come save their life, right? And that tends, money worshipers, it could be my, you know, my dad, my business partner, whoever, instead of like, oh, I need to figure out how to fix my life. And finally, we have money vigilance, which is associated, right, with higher net worth. There are people who believe that money should be saved or not spent. They tend to have emergency funds. They tend to have budgets, like written budgets or spending plans, but they also would never tell you because they are the money vigilant, are the worst about talking about it, right? And money vigilant people can also be, can also actually not have financial health because they are afraid to spend. They tend to be overworkers. So it can actually, so basically we're all a little bit of it. There's no good or bad, and don't go crazy if you're money vigilant. So I just, you know, how many of you would be comfortable telling the person next to them, like, what's your net worth? How much credit card debt do you have? What's in your retirement account? How big is your student loan balance? Etc. How much did you spend on clothes last year? How much on dinners? How much did you spend on coffee? And the reason, right, is I want you to almost hear that internal voice of yours. Like if I said, well, last month I spent $100 going out to dinner, right? In my head, I'd be like, oh my God, they probably think I'm so boring. They probably think I'm so boring. Like, who only spends $100 going out to dinner? She must be really a jerk, right? Or if I told you I spent $5,000, I'd be like, oh my God, they probably think I'm so ridiculous and I can't believe it. Almost no one gives you a dollar amount and thinks, oh, they're gonna think I'm really good for whatever I spent. So I want you to, one, be gentle with yourself, and two, really think about, why can't you share that with someone? Especially if you're trying to change your financial behaviors and you find a mentor, why not ask them, right? If there's someone whose financial life you would like to have, why not ask them how much they ate, how much money they spent last month? It's information. And yet most of us die. You guys can ask me though, I'll tell you. All right, so the first element is this understanding what your unconscious beliefs are. And so anyone who's interested, you can tell Elsie and I'll send this to her. It's actually a money egg exercise. And it is, has anyone ever done an egg, a trauma egg? Anyone take psychology? No. Okay. I mean, I'll send the directions, but basically you use your non-dominant hand. The theory being that if you use your non-dominant hand, you're linking both sides of your brain. I don't know if that's true or not, but at least it's adding a little component of fun, and it's hard to take yourself seriously when you do this with your non-dominant hand. And you start at the bottom. So you start at the bottom of the egg and you draw symbols that represent your first money memories, the youngest you can remember. And then with your dominant hand, just so that you can remember what you drew, you just write something to remind yourself of what that element is. And you keep going, much like this egg has been broken up, until you get to the top. And then at the very end, you write one sentence: the lesson I learned about money is. And in my experience, almost everyone has a conflicting belief about money, and usually negative. And so if you think about it, how are we supposed to have a healthy relationship with money if our beliefs are conflicted and negative? And no one will ever ask you, like, if you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to be like, so how's your relationship with money like? Is it good? Right? And yet that is the first question someone should ask who's trying to help. Right? And there's plenty of reasons to have bad relationships with money. And if money was always an issue in your family, if your parents fought about it, if your grandparents fought about it, if your siblings fought about it, who's going to want to pay bills then? Do you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't a positive, of course it's not going to be like, yay, let me learn all about it. So how about being nice to yourself? And how about also rewarding yourself? Like, I hope all of you will go out and get your favorite non-expensive beverage of choice, so that, well, because you know how I was saying that most of our behaviors are based on and actions come from the subconscious, and the only thing the subconscious understands are our senses. So if you want to change a behavior, you literally have to do the behavior and then do something that treats the senses. And so what your subconscious, which runs our life, is learning is, oh, financial activities, in my case, is what I encourage my clients to do. Financial tasks equals a good smelling candle, a hug, a pet of my dog, a cafe mocha, a bar of chocolate, whatever, listening to my favorite music, whatever it is, something with the senses. And you do that enough times, and suddenly you will no longer be a money avoider. But just talking to yourself and being like, you really shouldn't be a money avoider, that is not how we change. Okay, and then I have another really interesting, and again, you're welcome to email me. And it's called What Do You Believe? And this will have you, this is a short beginning of statements, and you write down as quickly as you can what you think the answers are. And there's no right or wrong. And the only wrong is if you overthink it, because then you've missed the whole point of this. It's called What Do You Believe? It's like 35. And here's how impactful. I had this a young couple. They had a young family come to me, and they had, how many of you are familiar with Dave Ramsey? Anyone? And his Financial Peace University. Yeah. Okay. So I actually studied under Dave. That's how I started this. And then I just kept going. The thing about, and Dave is figuring this out too, and which is why they've incorporated more financial coaches, is financial peace doesn't work for everyone. So people will have short-term change, but because financial peace fits Dave's personality and not everyone else's personality. It works for the people who it works for, and for the other people who it doesn't work for, they blame themselves instead of like, oh, that's one method, it doesn't work for me. Anyway, so this young couple came to me. They had paid off $25,000 of credit card debt in a year. Okay, $25,000 in a year. After that, he got a six-figure job. He'd never had a six-figure job. So now they have more money. And they came to me 18 months after he started the job, and they had $35,000 of credit card debt. So even though they had more disposable income, they got themselves into more debt problems. So they came to me and they were just, I mean, I'm not kidding. They were just, you know, we're the worst people and we're dumb and and I'm like, I promise you're not. I've never had a client who's not intelligent. I've never had a client who's not disciplined. There's always a reason for the financial behavior. So they do, what do you believe? And there's a question that says only the poor can. That's all it says, right? So whatever answer comes to your mind. And they both, the husband and the wife individually, because I had them do it separately, answered only the poor can go to heaven. And they both grew up as missionaries. Their families are missionaries. They're both evangelical Christians. And so I said, so I want you to think about this. For them, because this is their belief system, their most important goal was to get to heaven. Every time a penny was put into a savings account, that was a step away from what their ultimate goal is. So doesn't that make a lot of sense why they would get themselves into credit card debt? I mean, that's not irrational. Once you understand the thought process, that makes a lot of sense, because they think only the poor can get to heaven. So I said, look, I'm not a pastor. Go talk to your pastor. And if that is what you believe, then leave the American dream. It's not for everyone. Don't try and live a life that's not your life. And would any just traditional sort of class have helped them figure that out? Nope. Because they didn't even know they believed that. So that, and I'm telling you guys, I hope I hear from all of you, because this can be really, you will be surprised what you learn about yourself. I still crack up at my money crazy. I mean, the stuff that comes out of my mouth, and I have not only learned this, done this, I do continuing education with my mentors all of the time. I do thought leader things, and I'm still like, oh, is that what I think about money? That's so interesting. And once I say it out loud, then I can assess, do I think that? Do I not think that? Do I want to change that? All right. Now, and I don't know if this next slide will be interesting. I use it a lot when I talk to undergraduates, as well as like medical school residents, interns, because many of them are hoping to change their socioeconomic status. So if this isn't relevant to this group, we can just go to questions. If you think it would be, I'm happy to go to the next slide. What do you think, Elsie? Good? Okay. Okay, so how many times have you guys heard about musicians or lottery winners or sports figures, right, making a lot of money and then ending up with nothing after 10 years, right? That's a common story. And usually when that story is told, it's told in a way that disparages whoever made the money, right? It's not usually told understanding. It's sort of like, oh, they're dumb. They trusted the wrong person. Well, they're whatever. Okay. So let's just take professional athletes. Do you really think they're undisciplined? I mean, do you think they became professional athletes because they don't know how to do boring reps of things? Right? No. Same with musicians. And the reason is, once again, this community. So how many of us, so we all are born into a tribe. We may not like our tribe, right? We might try and break away from our tribe, but they're still our tribe. And many of us, there's plenty of examples in like many people who grew up with alcoholic parents marry an alcoholic. Not because they're like, oh, that looked like a good idea, but because that's what they know. That's the behavior that they know. And until you do some work, internal work, right? We tend to repeat the same patterns over and over and over again, which doesn't make us bad or undisciplined. It literally makes us human, because this is the way our brain works. So if you want to get out of, especially if you want to move up, but even if you want to move down, your socioeconomic, the first thing is, who are the 5 wealthiest people that I know, and what do I think of them? And I want you to really pay attention to how many sort of negative wealth things there are in there. I'm gonna guess. So I happen to have a brother who's worth like a good gazillion dollars, right? And I love him. I love him. I am so judgmental about his life. So should I ever end up with $1 gazillion dollars, I will in fact have to do internal work, because I have a lot of stories, right? And since it doesn't look like I'll end up with $1 gazillion, I don't have to do that much work. But just think about that. Think about, can any of you think of, well, like when you think of the 5 wealthiest people who you know in your life, is it all 100% positive? Yeah. Exactly. For most of us, it's not, right? And so when I work with my clients, I try and help, especially if they have sort of, if they're, and once again, you know, I'm happy. I hope you guys will reach out, because I always offer to work pro bono, a couple sessions with whoever attends one of these. And usually I hope you guys will beat what my usual, the number of people. Usually I have one person. So I've presented to UNC Chapel Hill residents, right? Like 150 of them. One person took me up on it. And he was the one who was like the most financially fit. And I love, as you can tell, I love doing this. Like, I hope you guys reach out to me. I love it. Especially because you guys can help change everyone in your circle. Like, my goal is to get this message out and to do it in a way where you're like, I actually feel good about myself and it's sort of fun, and I would like to share this. Anyway, so if you think about the 5 wealthiest people and you have some negative beliefs, I challenge you to be like, is it because they have money, or is it just that they have these negative personality traits and they have money, but they're not really related? All right. 2 is, who are the 4 poorest people I know, and what do I think of them? And so that's how you can start to see, much like the clients I was telling you about, the ones who got back into credit card debt, because they glorified people who didn't have a lot of money. So therefore, it's going to be hard for them to accumulate. And those are just questions to ask yourself. I don't have any answers. I could agree with everyone, whatever your answer is, but you need to know for yourself. And then, what is the dollar range of my financial comfort zone? So my dollar range is, if I was ever worth more than $15 million, I would have to have a talk with myself, because I would be very uncomfortable, because I have a whole story about people who are worth more than that. Now, I don't think I'll have to have that story, but I mean, really start thinking about it. What dollar amount would make me a jerk? Right? Because what happens is, if you don't do that work, you will subconsciously get rid of that money. Oh, thank you, Rose. And really, I really hope you will reach out, because I mean, I don't offer things I don't want to do. So please do. Okay. And then you ask yourself, are you currently closer to the top or the bottom? And I don't know why it's not, here we go. And then, would I like to raise it? And then, what do I need to do? And if I move out of my financial neighborhood, and I want you to really think about this, what will my friends and family think? So I have a couple of friends in the arts who literally went from, you know, not knowing how they were going to pay rent to having a couple $100,000 like that quickly, right? And that's really hard, even though it sounds delightful, but it's really hard. Like, what if someone asks me if I can lend them money? What am I going to say? Like, those are things to think about. What will you say? And again, there's no right or wrong answer except for an unthought, like a behavior that's not well thought out. So what I have seen happen is that people who change economic groups, they end up avoiding their families because they don't know how to feel, right? And they end up not really being comfortable in their new place and not really being comfortable in the old place. And it's not really worked out exactly as they hoped. And so, and of course, this is because they come to me, right? So no one comes to me because they're like, oh, I'm so happy. But because they haven't kind of figured out what they want to say and do. And so that is, and listen, I'm just going to say, I've lived with zero money and I've lived with some extra money. It's definitely, you have more options living with some extra money. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I am saying it's not going to cure your whole life and it will add some other problems. But I have so much faith that if you think about these sort of things before you get into, before you change neighborhoods, I guess, it will work out. And the good thing is that there are more and more and more people like me out in the world who are trained in financial psychology, who understand, right? And who really believe in your wisdom. I mean, that's one thing I love about my financial psychology world is we know that we have some things, ideas, things that we've seen, but we don't know what's right for you, but we're really happy to help figure it out. So, I don't know if anyone has any questions. If you want to, yeah. If anything that I said, you guys are like, that is so dumb. I love those questions because it just makes me better at what I do.
Any questions, guys? Well, maybe not right now, but I know that your excitement about talking about this got me a little excited.
Oh, yay.
And I might just take you up on your offer.
Oh, I really mean it. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you. And if you have questions after, seriously.
Yes. And if you have handouts or anything, I'll be more than happy to share it. I have everybody's emails. So even if you guys have questions that come to mind later, you can email me and I can contact Ms. Julia, and then we can make that conversation keep going. But I'm so happy that you were willing to talk to us. This was very refreshing and a very different financial literacy presentation. I was very
Thank you.
Yes, I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm sure I can tell that all the students also enjoyed it because it was a different way of looking at it. You know, we're always hearing about how to save, how to go to the bank, how to do all this, but never why do we do what we do with money, or what we do with money.
Yeah, and you know, another one next year, if you want me, would be, I'm not a big believer in needs versus wants. I actually think everything we do is meeting a need. It's just how we meet that need and not hurt our financial future. So I have this sort of different way of creating a budget spending plan. And if anyone's interested, like that's, and it tends to be a little more fun.
We'll be in touch for sure. Yes.
Okay.
I'll be happy to. I'll be honored to have you back. Yes.
Thank you. I'd be honored to come back. All right. Thanks, you guys. I'll send this to you tomorrow morning, Elsie, okay?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you have a great evening, everybody. And Julia, so nice to meet you. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks.